Hi, everybody. So, on behalf of SEM, we're so excited to be here and help you click, scroll, and share. My name's Kim Bombach, and I am an assistant professor of emergency medicine at The Ohio State University, and I'm a podcaster.
My name's Mike Pratz. I'm an associate professor of emergency medicine at Ohio State as well. I also am a podcaster. I do the Ultrasound Gel podcast. And Kim, I'm delighted to talk to you about this topic today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait.
Now, I do have some disclosures. I am a consultant for Ravana Medical Incorporated, and I've done some advertising for Econos on my podcast. Now, on to the show.
Let's do it. So, first of all, Mike is going to get us started with an introduction to social media. He's going to talk to us about the components and some best practices, and then I'm going to go over what FOAMed is and how we can use it.
So, to start us off, let's get a definition down. Social media can be loosely defined as any online environment or space where ideas and content can be shared. That's a pretty low bar. There's a lot out there that qualifies as social media. Examples would be YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, X, Reddit, community websites, even. Why are we interested in social media? Why is this burgeoning? Well, it's because it's fast. You get immediate connections. You can access it on your own time. And basically, it's a way to connect with the whole world. Even if that doesn't interest you, well, if you're a teacher, you're going to have to interact with people all the time who are constantly accessing this world. So you're going to have to go where your learners are. And you have to understand how these things are shaping the current generations and the way they learn and see the world. Social media is like this incredibly huge, ever expanding galaxy. It's really no wonder that it can be overwhelming to consider all the ways that you could interact on it. But that is what brings me to Dyson spheres. This is just something that helps me wrap my head around how I interact with this big world. A Dyson sphere is a sci-fi concept from the 1960s. But I think it is a useful analogy here. So stars give off tons of energy, right? They're just like big balls of fire and energy in space. And this idea came up that perhaps you could believe a advanced civilization out there. I'm talking about extraterrestrials, Kim. But perhaps they could construct a big metal sphere that wraps around a star and is able to harness all of the energy from it. And the idea is if you can harness all this energy, then you could easily have enough power to travel at light speed through the galaxy. Now, whether or not this is actually possible, I think it gives us a framework for the way I want to interact with this galaxy of social media. Because the way I see it, we're all building our own Dyson spheres, and the more efficient yours is, the more you can use what you get out of these media. There's tons of benefits that we're going to get to. But real quick, before we get into that, we have to distinguish between personal uses and professional uses of social media. The scope of this talk is going to be definitely focusing on your uses of social media as a medical professional. Now, sometimes those lines are blurry, like maybe you're at a social activity with colleagues from work and you're posting about it on social media. That's fine. That's natural. But for most purposes, what we're talking about today is how to harness social media for your job.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, Dyson sphere analogies for videos for professional organizations are okay, but your own theories about extraterrestrials better on personal time?
That's right on the money, Kim. And we can talk offline about some of my own theories.
Okay, so what's this pyramid about?
This is what I call the modified online hierarchy of needs. This was published several years ago now as a way to break down the different components of social media. And it's one of those Maslowian pyramids where the idea is that the most fundamental and necessary components are on the bottom. And as you go up, you get to the so-called higher needs. Now, I've modified this in two minor ways. The original had collaboration instead of connection as the second one from the top. And I Chose connection because I think it's a little bit more of a general term. There's plenty of interactions with other people that are not necessarily driven by a shared product. And then I added career onto the side because all of these components are relevant to your career. And if you think of your career as being affected by each level of the pyramid, then you're going to be in good shape. So Kim is going to talk about consumption and creation in the FOAMed part. So let's now tackle existence, safety, connection, and career. Okay, existence and safety, we're going to talk about pretty briefly because existence is simply your online identity. What comes up when you Google your name? Is it a professional work photo and a list of your academic accomplishments and publications? Or is it a photo of you at a music festival in college? What can you do about your existence? A lot of it is editable or at least controllable. Your social media profiles, your work website, you can make your own personal website. If there's something you don't like, you can try to have it removed. Whenever someone asks you for a photo or a headshot for a talk you're giving, make sure that it's one that you would not mind being accessible for years to come. Now on to safety. We all know the internet can be a dark place, but the type of safety we're referring to here is regarding your professional safety. And at this level, I want to give you a few good practices to be aware of. Number one, do not post protected health information. There's actually an ACEP guideline on this, and it mentions that getting a patient's verbal permission is not enough to comply with HIPAA. Keep in mind that your location, which is often traceable from your post, your place of practice, which is easily discernible through a quick search, dates and times that you mentioned, specifics of a case or maybe particular pathologies, all of these can trace back to individual patients that you treat. Be very careful when you're discussing cases. Obfuscation is the name of the game here. Change things, focus on why you're sharing this, change as much as you can about the whole case, delays and times, and otherwise, maybe consider doing a full consent if you're going to go into details here. Not a good idea to give medical advice through social media. If you are doing some teaching, you probably want to have some sort of a disclaimer, like I'm sure you've all heard on either podcasts or on blogs saying, hey, I'm just doing some teaching here. This doesn't constitute medical advice for patients. Okay, last but not least, try to be professional. More so than in the past, there's a blurring of the professional and the personal doctors, which is good and humanizing to us in many ways. But it's probably smart to keep some of this separate as far as your online behavior. You probably don't want to start side relationships with your patients on social media because that can be a slippery slope that is dangerous to both parties. And of course, when it comes to rules for using social media professionally, we would always advise you to follow your hospital or system's policy on any of these matters. All right, rising up the pyramid. How you doing so far?
I'm enjoying it. I feel like there's so many pearls in here that can help us be better stewards of social media and use it to our advantage.
I hope so. Now, if you're astute, you notice that we just jumped over part of the pyramid, and that's because Kim is going to talk about consumption when we get to the next section. So we're now going to talk about connection. And connection, I think, is intuitive to a lot of us because we're very aware of the myriad ways you can connect through social media. This can be as basic as messaging someone on Instagram about one of their posts, putting a comment on a YouTube video you liked, but there's also room for more in-depth collaborations. You can harness the power of social media to organize groups. You can complete projects, start podcasts like Kim and I have started together, or perform research. Anyone in the world is now accessible to you. You're really only limited by your imagination. So here, our advice would be think about what you want to accomplish. What's the goal of the connection? Is it for networking? Is it starting a project? Once you figured that out, then you can consider what social media tools fit that goal best. Remember that having an online platform is also a great way to promote your students or mentees, elevating their projects or accomplishments. All right, well, I know I just talked a lot. Let's do a quick recap. Social media has a very broad definition. It's basically any type of online interaction. Be aware of and shape your online identity. And lastly, just be smart and safe in your connections. So, Kim, I feel like I've been kind of saving the best for last. Will you please tell me about the remaining parts of the pyramid and what this foamed thing is? Is that right? Is that the right way to say it?
Foamed, Steeler's choice, just we're not talking about bubbles or anything like that, although that would be an interesting lecture. That was not requested by SAM. So, I'm gonna try and make the case that FOMED belongs in this discussion of social media. You've probably heard the term, but it stands for Free Open Access Medical Education, and it's really this global movement aimed at democratizing medical knowledge because it makes it free and accessible to everybody through these high quality online resources. So, FOMED isn't social media, and social media is not just educational content. It needs a distribution channel. So, if we contrast them, basically, FOMED is for knowledge sharing. Social media may prioritize entertainment or personal branding. FOMED tends to aim for academic rigor, although that could be debatable. But social media leans into this immediacy at the cost of accuracy sometimes. And FOMED is often archived and searchable, whereas social media posts are transient and lost in the ether. But the bottom line is FOMED uses social media, it just isn't defined by it. So it really belongs in this conversation. If we think back to your pyramid, Mike, it really is both consumption and creation. We take in FOMED through social media, and I bet a lot of these resources are near and dear to our hearts. We also, as medical educators, we want to be responsible creators of FOMED. So that's the very tippy top of your pyramid, the self actualization of social media, so to speak, if you want to compare it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you won't be surprised that emergency medicine has led the charge in this FOMED space. You've probably relied on a lot of these. So podcasts like Ultrasound Gel or MCRIT, blogs like Allium and Rebel, EKG resources. I know I use Life in the Fast Lane on shift all the time, or gamified resources like ECG Stampede. Although we're all astute clinicians, I've definitely been known to look up a procedure or two on YouTube. But the bottom line is it's varied. There are all sorts of forms that this can take. And in the future, who knows? Maybe virtual reality, augmented reality, whatever comes next. I want to also acknowledge that there are paid platforms like MRAP, and they're not technically FOMED, but they're still valuable and often cited in the same breath. So, Mike, do you have some favorites up here?
So many, Kim. And it's really hard to choose among all these resources that I've relied on for years and years. I just love that you highlighted some old standbys that are still going strong, that are bastions of knowledge, and then some other new innovators out there. So there's so much good content constantly being developed that you got to constantly be searching to see what's new.
100%. It has a lot of benefits, and that's why we're talking about it. So, basically, my favorite thing about it is that it's current and innovative. And we've mentioned that many times already. It can really adapt quickly because it can reflect current events and educational trends. It also might represent things that bridge the gap in a standard curriculum. So it's not in the textbook yet. You can also distribute it widely and it's accessible to everybody. And you can have diverse perspectives and it can be equitable because everybody can contribute their voice. Collaboration is also key. There's so many large communities of practice online that you can engage with. But the reality is there are pitfalls too. So there can be inaccuracies because of a lack of peer review. There can be bias. There can be really surface level content that lacks depth or nuance because everybody's posting about their hot takes or the new technique they tried that weekend on their shift. It can also create echo chambers. So popular creators, they may dominate the conversation and really that may result in inaccurate critique of what they're disseminating. So I like the analogy that FOMED is a great supplement, but it shouldn't be your whole diet. Or maybe we should say it's an appetizer. You know, it gets you excited to eat the meal. If it's something that you need to look into, you still need to crack open Tintin Alleys or Rosen's or the primary literature. So, how can we circumvent these potential pitfalls? How can we critically appraise foam? So, is it a reputable site? Is it peer reviewed? Is it authored by experts or verified educators? And does it cite current research that's up to date and reflects the latest medical guidelines? These are things you need to ask yourself. So are we foam alone? And I want to mention Mike wanted to put a picture of Macaulay Culkin up here, which we weren't sure if we had the rights to do. It's totally counterintuitive, but foam ed sites are actually declining in numbers. So this is from a 2022 paper by Lin et al. And they found that the unique foam sites are actually dropping. It's actually like a 40% decrease from 2014 to 2022. So a few potential reasons. Traditional journals and institutions have absorbed foam ed principles into their platforms, and independent creators face burnout or financial challenges. It's a huge undertaking to run a foam ed site, and it can be really expensive too. There are also really high user expectations that can discourage or eliminate novices or lower quality content. So we're all used to that really high production quality of graphics or videos and sound quality when we're listening to podcasts. So newcomers might have a high barrier to entering the scene.
Speaking of coming into the scene, Kim, I feel like there's a big elephant in the room that we haven't even touched yet. What are we going to do about artificial intelligence? How does that come into play?
Yeah. So AI tools can be really awesome and help us create foam ed content. You might use a large language model like ChatGPT to draft blog posts or podcast scripts or translate lectures you already have into a different format. You might use it for lit searches with tools like Open Evidence or have it organize your citations for you. You might create promotional materials like graphics or summaries or teaser videos. And I wanted to put you in this image, Mike. This is what happened when I asked ChatGPT to create an image of ER doctors talking about foam ed and social media, but I didn't want to feed you into the algorithm without your consent. But I think it did a good job. I think that that's pretty much what my life's like.
It's too late, Kim. I'm already in.
Okay, so the bottom line, this is really neat, but it has its own issues. It's vulnerable to bias. There's the concept of garbage in and garbage out, meaning it's only as good as the data that it's been fed. It can also hallucinate, meaning it just makes stuff up. And it raises questions about academic integrity too. So you have to look up the policy wherever you're submitting your content to, and you may need to disclose if you've used AI in some form. So I'm going to summarize here. Foam ed is a movement. It's a concept that uses social media that we rely on as educators and as learners. But foam ed still needs critical appraisal. We have to ask ourselves those questions when we're looking at resources and use those principles to create robust resources ourselves. And the landscape is changing. So there may be this decline of foam ed. And at the same time, this rise of AI that's changing how we use it and how we consume it and how we create it.
The times they are changing, Kim. That's one thing that doesn't change. So I appreciate you going through all of that. And now I'm going to attempt to wrap up every step that we've talked about, every level of this pyramid under the umbrella of our careers. Now, we talked about existence and safety and consumption and connection and creation. And I think it should be evident how this can all play into our career. But let me try to give you a couple of practical suggestions for this. The way that I think about it, there's many different ways that you can directly use social media to help your career. The first would be mentorship, and that is both seeking out mentorship for yourself, but also being available as a mentor to others. So use the tools available to make this easy. No longer do your mentors have to work in the same office building as you. You can be mentored by experts around the world, and you can also mentor people all over the place. And that is a really helpful and beautiful way to connect. Secondly, embrace the technology. Stay updated with what's going on. It's inevitable. This is happening. And I know some of us want to sometimes live a reclusive life in a little mountain getaway without a cell phone or internet. But I think being a doctor in this day and age, you're going to have to embrace it at some point. And like I said, you need to understand where other people are, our patients, where our learners are, in order to engage with them effectively. Lastly, start collecting data on anything you do online, whether it be the alt metrics on your published paper, the number of followers you're growing on your professional social media accounts, engagements you're getting, website hits. Collect that and store it somewhere. These are best recommendations from a paper that is linked here with this QR code on creating your digital portfolio. Because more and more, as we're doing things online, we're going to need to quantify that for the purposes of showing our academic productivity, and ultimately, it can play a role in promotion. I think that's about all that we needed to cover, Kim. So we really crossed a lot of ground here. We went through the whole pyramid of needs from our most basic interactions with social media all the way to creating our own content. Do you have any last words of wisdom for our audience today, Kim?
Yeah, I think you've really convinced me because I have the tendency to be one of those recluses up in the mountains and shy away from social media, that I can still have a positive relationship with it and use it strategically in my career. So I really appreciate you giving us those guidelines.
Well, thank you, Kim. I learned a lot from you on this little video lecture as well. Thanks to SAEM for the opportunity. And hopefully, we'll see you guys online or in person.